Yo, what is up? It is your boy Xehther, back at it again with what if Deku hit Bakugo instead? Now, some of you guys may be clicking on this video and wondering, what are you talking about, dude? Like, what do you mean? When is he gonna hit him? And as for the explanation, okay, so what the premise of this entire video is going to be about is essentially, what if Deku, instead of hitting up at the roof in the Heroes versus Villains training, instead he hit Bakugo? What would happen to the series if this were to occur? And that's what I'm going to be covering today. So if you guys want to know what happens if Deku were to hit Bakugo instead, make sure to keep watching to the end of the video, since it's going to get a little fun. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and get started. Okay, so as I already stated, the premise of this what if is going to be essentially, what if Deku hit Bakugo instead? Meaning, we're actually going to be starting off essentially the same day as, the day of the Heroes versus Villains. Our day obviously starts off just like it does in canon, with All Might doing his I am here, coming in like a normal hero or something like that, right? And every single one of the students basically getting changed. We're going to pick this all off the second that Bakugo and Deku get told that they're going to be against each other. In this version of events, this is where the timeline is going to start changing. See, in this version, when Bakugo hears that he's going to be facing up against Deku, he smiles and he looks towards Deku as he begins to chuckle, thinking that this is going to be too easy. As Deku would give him a determined glare back, and we would then have Bakugo getting angry as he scoffs and walks off. But this time, that determined look in Deku's eyes it hit something within Bakugo that made him kind of angrier than he was in the original. We're going to change that up just a little bit. So, yeah. Anyways, of course, we're going to have the battle basically continue just like it does in canon, with Deku and Uraraka essentially talking to each other, basically just getting to know what their quirks are and what their strategy it is that they're going to be using. As Deku would tell Uraraka that he's almost positive that Bakugo is most definitely actually going to come attack him first. So their best course of action would be for him to take him out and for her to go get on Ida, so that Deku can basically join her for a 2-on-1. Just like they do in canon, obviously. Now, as soon as Bakugo comes in through the building yelling, "Deku!" we're obviously going to have Deku be like, "Get out of here!" to Uraraka, as she would get out of the area. And of course, when Bakugo comes in with the fist, Deku would grab it and slam him onto the ground, as they would have the same interactions that they do in canon. Bakugo would say, "Dude, Deku," as he would basically charge at him and begin using his normal moves as in canon. Except this time, when Bakugo was screaming and saying things to Deku, he would begin to be a lot more aggressive, as he would say, "Deku, you're nothing but a piece of garbage below my feet. I can't believe you even dare stand in front of me," as he would grab Deku and smash him into the walls, shooting explosions at his gut and basically just hurting him a lot more than he would in canon, with Deku barely being able to dodge and getting grazed by most of these attacks, with Bakugo's onslaught just continuing more and more. Bakugo would continue to tell Deku that he's nothing but a worthless, quirkless Izuku, and it doesn't matter what power he was given or how he even got this power, that he's gonna crush him. As Deku would look towards Bakugo and have a fear in his eyes, as anger would start to build up within Deku. He would begin to get major flashbacks of the events that happened when he was a child. All the times that Bakugo would have, done him in the way that he did. And he would end up just remembering every single piece of event, as Deku would be about a little bit farther away from Bakugo. And Bakugo would begin to basically walk up to Izuku, as Izuku had already hidden from him. And Bakugo would begin to walk up to him as he says, "Hey, Deku, come on out." As we would of course then have Deku essentially just be running there, standing on the side of the hallway, as Bakugo would smile, saying that this is it for him, as he would look at his gauntlet and basically pull the trigger, as the explosion would go throughout the entirety of the room, and Deku would jump away, getting hit by most of the damage and exploding his outfit just like it did in canon. And of course, this is when Bakugo would tell All Might that he won't die if he gets out of the way, as of course he would throw it, and Deku would get majorly injured, as I had already stated. After this, we would of course then have Deku standing there with his hand in front of him, bleeding a little bit, as Deku's walking up, and they would have the same interaction, with Bakugo realizing what Deku means. As Bakugo's basically getting angrier and angrier about the fact that Deku doesn't give up, Deku's anger would begin to swell up as well, as he would look towards Bakugo and yell at him, telling him that it doesn't matter what quirk he has, and all those years that he treated him like garbage, he's gonna make him regret it. As Deku and Bakugo would look towards each other, and they would begin to, both look at each other and realize that this ends here. As All Might would be on the speaker saying, "Izuku, don't do it!" And of course, we would then have Deku and Bakugo rush at each other. As in this point of time, Deku would throw the punch, in which Bakugo uses his explosions mid-air to barely dodge it. But the simple air pressure and grazing of Deku's fist was enough to send Bakugo flying through the whole wall of the building and crashing outside, as Bakugo would be in critical condition, and Deku would have been aghast at what he just did. He just killed Bakugo, as he would run outside and say, "Kachan!" As he would see Bakugo's body laying on the ground, as he has several of his bones broken, and he's covered in glass and broken bones as well as blood. As Deku would say, I'm so sorry. And at that moment, Deku would say, "The battle stops now," as he would rush over to Bakugo and take him immediately to Recovery Girl, as he would give Deku a glare and tell him that he's going to talk to him after class. As of course, Deku would begin to instantly regret what had just happened, saying that he didn't mean to. He didn't want to hurt Bakugo that bad. As of course, we would then have Deku then battling some demons, wondering what would have happened if I actually hit him. What would have happened if that blow did connect? I would have killed him. As Deku would look towards his hand, and he would begin to wonder and ponder if it was the wisest decision to essentially give him one for all. Also, sorry for the the low key like stuttering and stopping within the video that I'm doing. Your boy, I need some water. I ain't gonna lie to y'all, but I'll just drink some when this video's done. But anyways, with that being said, though, we would then have Deku essentially just looking at his hands, as of course he's just wondering what's going on. And after about a couple of hours, the entirety of Class 1A would be by Bakugo's, hospital room, as they would begin to basically talk about how bad it was what Deku did. And some of the people in Class 1A, such as Kirishima and the rest of them, would basically be saying that, it was an accident. And that, if anything, Bakugo also had as much blame as Deku did, seeing as he used his strongest attack on Deku. So why should he not get reprimanded for what happened? If he would have killed Deku, I bet it would be in the same boat. As everybody in the class would begin to basically discuss, and people like Momo would begin to say that Deku should have never used an attack at that scale inside of a building. He could have killed a classmate, no matter what it was that Bakugo did before that. As we would have a little bit of a civil war and debate between the classroom, and Deku would just be in the back looking down at the ground, as Uraraka standing next to him, comforting him, telling him that it's okay. She knows he didn't mean to. It must have just happened by accident. As Deku would not be responding to anybody. And this is when All Might would walk inside and basically tell Deku that he needs to talk to him. As everybody in the class would go silent, and Deku would immediately go over to All Might's little lounge room. As he would begin to talk to All Might, and we would of course have All Might essentially looking towards Deku, as he would tell him that what happened today, that was inexcusable. As he would begin to look at Deku and ask him, "Why did you do it?" As Deku would just look down at the floor, as he would say, I'm sorry, All Might. I never meant for this to come this far. I didn't mean to hurt him that bad, All Might. You have to believe me." As All Might would say, "Listen, young Midoriya, I know what you did wasn't by your own choice, and I know it was an accident. However, we cannot have anything like this or on this sort of scale ever happen again. So, me and Principal Nezu are going to be having a talk about this, and we're going to decide what the punishment is. I don't know what's going to happen to you, Izuku, but you'll need to be prepared, because you're definitely going to have to face the consequences of your actions." As Deku would look down, and he would say, "All Might, you wouldn't understand, All Might. For years, I was his punching bag. I was always weaker than him. I was somebody for him to step on. And he always bullied me along with everybody else. He would always call me garbage and tell me that I was nothing but a worthless piece of Deku. Something that couldn't do a single thing. And I was quirkless. By the end of the middle school years and the last day of school, he told me that I should kill myself and jump off of a roof. He always did this to me, All Might. I bet somebody like you wouldn't understand what it's like to be treated in that way. To be told that you can't do anything because you're quirkless. To be told that you're nothing. Somebody like you would never understand, All Might. It's hard, and I'm sorry for what I did, but a part of me just wanted that to happen. How can I just do this living in this constant fear of Bakugo? He always tortured me and made me feel as if I was nothing. And the only sort of consolation I would ever get was coming back home to my mother, in which she would have nothing but pity for me. I'm sorry for what I did to him, All Might. I really am. But what Bakugo did to me was something that I just can't forgive. And in that moment, I guess I let it all come out. I let it all bottle up, and instead of addressing the problem the way that I should have, I just let it all come out in that one moment. I should have never reacted like that, All Might. You're right. But is it really all my fault? He tried to kill me as well, All Might. As All Might would listen to this, as he was right at the door, and he would say, I understand, Izuku. But as I said, these actions will have consequences. And I'm sorry for that, but we'll talk later, Izuku. As he would exit the room, and Deku would be just sitting there pondering what had happened. As he would stay there for a couple of hours, and we would then have him go to Bakugo's room. As Recovery Girl would say that he should make a full recovery in about 1 week and a half from now. As Deku would look towards his old, his old bully and just feel sorry for what he did. Feel sorry for what he told All Might. Yeah, Bakugo may have done that, but he could have killed him. At least Bakugo never got to that extent. Yet. As Deku would stare at Bakugo's body, and Bakugo would just be sort of unconscious for a while. As they would keep him there, and Mitsuki would rush in, and she would immediately basically tell Deku that, what did he do to her son, as they would explain the entire situation, and Inko and Mitsuki would both be informed that both of their sons, and students, I guess you could say, will be suspended from UA for about 1 week. Zuko will be suspended up until the event of the USJ, and Bakugo will be suspended and Bakugo will receive 1 day. Actually, his suspension will pretty much just be happening as he's in his condition, seeing as they don't exactly want to put dirt on a scar. But anyways, as that said, we would then have Deku go home with Inko, and she would begin to say that she knows why he did it, but she doesn't think it should have gone that far. As Deku would look at her and say, I know, Mom. I know. As the very next day would come by, and we would then have Deku basically spend the next couple of days that he has off just talking to All Might. As All Might would begin to tell Deku that he doesn't know what's happening, but clearly if he would have been a better mentor, this probably would have gone by a lot better. As at this point, All Might would acknowledge that he had some of the fault as well, because if he would have taught Izuku to better control One for All, Izuku probably would have never had to resort to using the full 100%. As we would then have All Might basically telling Izuku that the next time that they have a sort of break, he's going to be meeting somebody very special to him, that he already sent him a message, and whenever they have like a sort of break or something like that, he's going to go train with somebody. And you all know who this certain somebody is. As Deku for the next couple of weeks would just spend doing a lot of exercise and workouts, as he would be doing any of his studies that he basically has to catch up on. And we're now just basically going to cut back over to the day in which Bakugo basically wakes up about 4 days from now. As Deku would be in the hospital, and Bakugo would wake up, as he would see Zuko sitting there, as Bakugo would have us look in his eye of straight anger and fear at the same time. He would stare right at Deku as he just feels a sort of overwhelming pressure coming off of him, as he would think he was able to put me in this state. Damn Deku! As Deku would just be sitting there, kind of looking at his old bully, as you could see the eyes that Bakugo was giving him. As Deku would take a step back, and he would then proceed to walk out of the room. As Bakugo would say, Deku, you better stay out of my way. Next time, things are gonna go a lot different, Deku. As a sort of part of him was terrified. He would be trembling as he says that, saying as he just almost died from this small, fragile thing that he used to be nothing but a stepping stool to him. As Bakugo would look towards Deku, and he would then, go back to his bed and sleep it off. As about 1 more week would go down, and this is when we're now actually going to be having the event of the USJ. As Deku would be on the bus, and everybody there would basically kind of be staying away from him. People who were on, Bakugo's side of things, saying that he should have never resorted to that, would basically be on Bakugo's. And some of the people who basically believed that Deku wasn't even in the wrong, and that, yeah, he might have messed up, but it was just that. It was just a mistake. It should have never escalated this far. And some people definitely agree with this, but other people other people would, of course, not have that same sentiment. So the bus would kind of be divided into two sections, in which some people are telling Deku that, they understand what happened. And we would then have Deku and, Uraraka and Ida basically all the way in the back, as Ida would actually be, oh, actually, no, Ida would be on Bakugo's side of things. Even though he doesn't like him, he still is one of those, like, rulesy type of guy. So I would see Ida being on Bakugo's side. Anyways, they would arrive to the USJ, in which Aizawa would basically tell them all to go see 13, as all of the events would basically unfold just like they did in canon, up to the point where they land on what is essentially the boat. As soon as they land there and Tsuyu saves Deku, she would kind of glare at him, as she's one of the people who are kind of supporting Bakugo. And we would then have Mineta looking at Deku as if, a little bit of pity, seeing as he's actually on Deku's side as well. And this is when Deku would basically ask them both what their quirks are and how they're going to get out of here, to which Tsuyu would basically begrudgingly say what the cause of everything is. And we would then have Mineta essentially telling Deku what his quirk is, as, he would have that little reaction as in canon. He would say, like his usual little scaredy cat stuff. As, in this version, we would have, Deku basically looking at Tsuyu as he would tell her the plan. And we would, of course, then have this entire little part go by almost the same as it does in canon. Deku would jump off of the boat, but instead of doing what he did in canon, instead of doing, hold on, give me a second. Instead of doing what he does in canon, Deku would proceed to just jump off and say, "Here's John." No, I'm joking. Deku would proceed to basically jump off of the boat, as he would proceed to say, as he would throw a punch at the water. And we would, of course, have that same little typhoon / tsunami thing basically occur in the water, as Mineta would throw a bunch of balls, and we would then have them all basically land at the area in which, Aizawa was basically getting his head beaten in by the Nomu. And as this is happening, we would, of course, then have, the Nomu just continuing to beat on, him. As we would then have Deku, Mineta, and Tsuyu basically just standing there with their mouths covered, thinking how awful this must be. As they would be standing there kind of helpless in order to do anything at all to save their teacher. As this is when, Deku would decide that he needs to help, but he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to use his quirk. He almost killed somebody last time, and he doesn't know what's going to happen if he uses it again. As we would then have, Mineta and Tsuyu basically looking towards Deku, as they would look towards him and tell him that, what are they going to do? What's the plan? As Deku would say that he doesn't know. He doesn't know what to do. He's kind of faltering and stuttering with what he's doing. As of course, we would then have the moment with Shigaraki stepping up to them when he's about to touch Tsuyu almost happening. As Shigaraki almost touching Tsuyu would happen a lot differently. See, in this version, Deku was scared to use his quirk. He didn't want to accidentally kill Shigaraki as well. Even as much as he deserves it, he doesn't want everybody in the class to turn against him and say that Deku is a murderer or a villain or something like that. As Deku would be too afraid to use his quirk. And when Shigaraki was about to kill Tsuyu, this is when Todoroki would come in, shooting his eye right between them both. As Shigaraki would barely not have killed Tsuyu and decayed her. As of course, this is when we would then have the rest of the events basically unfold just like they do in canon. Shortly after this, Shigaraki would be like, looks like you got a little bit of a powerful ice quirk, I see. As, you would then have Shigaraki basically trying to hold off Todoroki trying to hold off Shigaraki, as the Nomu would continue to beat on Aizawa. And this is when we would have All Might busting through the door saying, "I am here." As he would be angry, and this entire situation would basically go to canon up until the point where he smashes the Nomu out of the building and basically does his usual plus ultra, his usual thing. As of course, we would then have, most of these events basically going through as they pretty much do in canon, and the cleanup and the little situation between All Might and Shigaraki would basically go by normal, with, All Might standing there barely being able to hold this, buff All Might form, and he would basically be standing there just like he does in canon. After this, we would of course have the cleanup, and this is when we're actually going to be covering a little bit of changes. Actually, a lot of changes. See, in this version, as soon as they get their 1 week break, All Might tells Deku to meet him at Dagoma Beach. He needs to talk to him about something. As we would have Deku basically going to Dagoma Beach, and All Might would begin to tell Deku that he's going to send him with his master during this 1 week off that they're going to have from UA, to basically see if he can help him out with controlling One for All, seeing as All Might is having a hard time, and seeing as he's not the greatest of a teacher, he's gonna see if maybe his master can help whip him into shape. As of course, we would have Deku accept this, and he would then proceed to talk to his mom about this and tell her that it's something about school, just basically lying to her and making something up. She would of course believe it, and he would make some fake documents for her to sign, and he would go on the train over to Gran Torino's house. As this time, instead of Gran Torino playing a little prank with ketchup and saying, "What's your name again?" he would essentially just hit Deku as soon as he walks in the building, telling him, "So, you don't know how to control your power, huh? Well, this is what you're going to be learning how to do." As of course, we would have Gran Torino proceeding to just beat on Deku for a little bit, as he would then ask Deku why he doesn't know how to control his quirk, and he would begin to ask Deku why he doesn't just use the entirety of the quirk throughout his entire body. As of course, we would then have Deku essentially learning full cowling 2% during the entire week that he's off with Gran Torino, or not a week, he would have about 6 days to be with him. And during those 6 days, seeing as, before he had even more controller of the quirk, I'm saying that because he had 2 days to master full cowling, instead in this version it's going to take him the full week to master 2% full cowling, where he's basically able to move a lot faster than he does in he's basically 5% full cowling, just like a little nerf, I guess you could say. So basically that's the level that Deku's at the current moment. And of course he's not going to be learning anything such as shoot style or anything like that for the time being. Now, this is when Deku's training with, Gran Torino would go by pretty well. And during this time, Gran Torino would have been trying to basically tell Deku that what happened was nothing but a mistake. And that if he falters in using his power, his own power, then that's going to lead to nothing but bad consequences happening because of that. As Deku would hear Gran Torino out, but some part of him just can't let it go. He has a sort of restraint blocking him from using his full potential. If it wasn't for that, he could probably use about 5% of full cowling, but he just has something blocking him at all times. As of course, he would return back to his normal, place that he lives at, and he would tell his mom, hi, and they would have some normal interactions, where they would basically return to school, and Aizawa would inform the class of what had happened. With Bakugo this time basically saying that they're all extras just like in canon, and walking off. With Bakugo, before he walks off, looking towards Deku's direction and giving him a strong glare, as he would say, basically not saying anything, seeing as he still has some sort of fear towards Deku. As Deku would just kind of look down again, as every time that he sees Bakugo, he just can't help but feel bad and feel responsible for what had happened to Bakugo. As of course, we would then have Deku essentially going through the normal situations, and everything is basically going to remain as it does in canon up until the point where they're basically giving the speech. Bakugo would of course still do his normal "I'm gonna win" and leave, and the race would be announced. But this is when a couple of things are going to change. The race is not exactly something too crazy or nothing that really matters too much, so I'm going to go over this very briefly. In terms of this race, seeing as Deku doesn't have to rely on nothing but these explosions, I'm going to say that instead Deku uses the full percentage of 2% full cowling to basically keep up in around 10th place or so. Seeing as full cowling isn't exactly that fast, but it definitely does give you a little bit of a speed boost. He would be tailing somebody like Ida, I guess you could say, and he would definitely be, among the top 10 people of, the race. As, everything would basically go by just as normal up until he gets to the bombs. But this time, instead of doing what he had done in canon, I don't think this version of Deku would really think that he has to rely on that, seeing as that's a little bit of a gamble, and he would try to go with more of the smart approach, thinking that it's okay for him not to basically win this one. He can win the rest of the events. As All Might would have still ended up telling him to show the world that he's here, and basically prove the rest of Class 1A that what happened was an accident. As of course, we would have him get about 11th place, but he would not end up winning the race just because of, not using the explosion. Now, this is when we're now going to get into the cavalry battle, but the team would essentially remain the same, consisting of Uraraka, Tokiyami, and Mei Hatsue. The battle between that would actually go a lot different since it does in canon, since in this version of events, Deku doesn't have the 10 million point headband, and instead, what would end up happening during the cavalry battle would basically be a situation in which it basically revolves around Todoroki, Bakugo, and the rest of the other teams that are more on the big side, basically attacking, let's see, who would I consider winning this race? I'm thinking that Bakugo would end up winning, seeing as he wants to catch up to Deku and stop fearing him, so he would have ended up training during the 1 week off. And I'm going to say that Bakugo actually ended up doing a little bit better than he does in canon. Of course, we're still going to have the normal situation happen, and we're gonna have Deku basically going through normal cavalry battle, except this time, oh wait, no, not normal, but a lot different situation. This time, as I said, Bakugo, Todoroki, and another team, another big team, would basically be fighting over the 10 million points. And instead of doing that approach, Deku would decide that the smartest choice of action would essentially be to go after other teams that aren't that strong, to steal headbands and rack up points in that way. Seeing as Deku has a small amount of points that if they rack up a little bit more, they can secure a safe spot. And they have to just be cautious using Tokiyami's Dark Shadow. They would gather a bunch of headbands and they would actually rise up the ranks to be at about third place. They would be about third place in terms of placing. And this is when we're now actually going to hop onto the battles, which the battle with Shinso and Deku would actually go by a lot different. Wait, would it really go a lot different? I actually think that this battle would actually go by relatively the same. Deku would still meet all of the previous successors of One For All and see all of the vestiges as he would flick his finger, and he would end up still taking the dub against Shinso. Yeah, he would still end up taking the win against Shinso. And if some of you guys are wondering, yo, why do you always change your mind a lot? I don't script my videos, boys. Anyways, so we would then have, Deku basically go to the next battle, which is essentially his battle against Todoroki, in which the same events would happen. Deku would be in the waiting room and Todoroki would declare war, except this time, Bakugo wouldn't actually declare war as well. He would instead, after Todoroki comes inside, basically look at Deku as he barges in the room and basically grabs him by his shirt, telling him that this time things are going to change, Deku. As he would have fear within him, but he would put up a little bit of a facade to basically make Deku think that he doesn't feel any sort of way and that he has nothing but hate. But deep inside, Bakugo fears Deku. He fears that great power within Izuku. And we would then have the battle between Todoroki and Deku happening, which would actually not go in the same way that it does in canon. Deku would not be focused on telling Todoroki, it's your quirk, not his! So instead, Todoroki would never get that talk to him, and he would never have that sense snapped into him, resulting in Deku essentially just using his fingers to flick at Todoroki, resulting in him basically getting into the final attack, which would be Todoroki using his flash freeze, or whatever it was, the big attack with the fire and he wouldn't use that. He would use nothing but a big giant geyser of ice to basically take Deku down. And since Deku's arm and fingers would be broken, he would actually have no real way to do anything. And as for why he still does that approach, some of you guys may be wondering. See, the thing is, 2% full cowling is, at the end of the day, still 2% of full cowling. And against somebody like Todoroki, who's a long range, I don't actually believe that he could have beaten him or even had much of a difference to this event. Seeing as 2% is, 2% at the end of the day, like I already said. So anyways, Todoroki would still, end up happening, which would happen with Deku, and Deku would still be knocked out of the arena. But, that's essentially what would happen. But if you guys actually, should I end it up here? Nah, I'm gonna keep going. Anyways, and this is when we would then have basically the next battle come to, which would essentially be Bakugo versus Todoroki. But seeing as Todoroki doesn't have that restraint on him that Deku would put on him with his ice and fire, Todoroki would actually end up defeating Bakugo fair and square, never even needing to resort to fire. And since Bakugo doesn't know about that, he wouldn't be fighting with that sort of drive to him. Instead, he would just fight the normal battle, giving it all 100%. But Todoroki would just, I believe that at this point, Todoroki would definitely beat Bakugo. So I'm going to say that by the end of everything, Todoroki ends up winning, getting the first place, with Bakugo getting second and still being angry as he was in canon. Still knowing that he lost fair and square, but he's angry at the fact that he couldn't, do what he had said in his promise. As of course, he would be salty, and we would then have, basically Todoroki getting the medal, with All Might and them all basically having their normal interactions. But this, guys, this is where we're actually going to be leaving off part 1 for what if Deku hit Bakugo instead. I hope you guys enjoyed this scenario, seeing as this is a lot different than my usual videos that I make, which are, normally reincarnations or what if Deku had this character's powers. Instead, I'm now actually going to start trying to do what ifs that would actually affect the story without changing, characters or, shit like that. So instead of doing what I usually do, I'm instead just going to do things like what if All Might died in the Camino incident or stuff like that, basically. I'm probably not going to do that one. Actually might, but You guys get the point. This video, though, I do want to say one quick thing before I end off. This video was heavily inspired by people like Masako X, Salad Sane, and other people like that. Seeing as I actually got a little bit of inspiration, seeing as I kind of, I see the way that they're able to change their story so much in just one little change that I wanted to see if I could give that a go and try to replicate that sort of style. So yeah, with that being said, big shout out to any YouTubers like that who do stuff like this. And if anybody else has done this, I don't believe they have. If anybody else has done this, props to you, man. But with that being said, guys, you guys know the drill. It has been your boy Xehther, and as always, I am out. Peace.